Hey, good morning, all. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. It's Tuesday, and that means we get to talk about politics today. And if you're wondering what you were going to do on Tuesday, the 27th of June, and you're watching this live, well, now you know. You were going to start out at least by watching the Common Good Podcast. And we're so glad to have you. This is Doug Padgett. I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Rob Ryerson is here, squirreled away somewhere outside of Fayetteville. And we're joined by a guest from Nashville, Tennessee. So you're going to get to hear from someone who wants to be the next mayor of Nashville. That's Heidi Campbell. So we're going to chat with her in a minute. But good morning, Rob. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Doug. Doug,
I see Jim in the chat too. Good morning, Jim, and thank you for your promptness on your good mornings. And
he's got his notifications turned on and everything.
He got the
got the little bell, and he's ready to go. Hey, Doug, how you feeling about RFK Jr.?
My neighbor who really wants to vote for a Republican again just asked me that the other day. He's sort of noodling me on. I just have no opinion about Robert Kennedy Jr. Other than I don't think he should be president, but I don't think the last guy should be. I don't think the last guy should have been president either. So what do I get to say about that? Why do you suggest?
I'm just there's. I don't want him to be president either. I don't think he is qualified or competent to be president. But I don't know. There seems to be something beginning to take off in the zeitgeist with him. There's something there. Yeah, and I mean it's not good, but there's something there.
Yeah, Yabbits tries to make the suggestion that he's the MAGA Democrat. I would say he's the MAGA-crat. I think we could come up with that word, that there would be somebody, a MAGA-crat. Yeah, and he's an anti-vaxxer, so that's his lane.
Yes. Now
the bullies over there that run Twitter and the bully that runs Spotify, they like pushing his stuff because he's an anti-vaxxer guy. And so there's enough people that were bothered by all that I don't know, he's probably got a little following.
Yeah.
Should we invite him to come on? Apparently he'll come on to anybody's podcast. He was on that Joe Rogan thing, so he'll probably come on here.
Oh yeah. I'll get an email off to his people today.
Yeah.
Not excited about him. Am excited about Heidi Campbell, who's running for mayor of Nashville.
Yeah. Good morning,
hey, Heidi. How are you?
Hey, hi there.
Heidi, thanks for being with us today. And if anyone ever accuses you of being a MAGA-crat, I hope you can say absolutely not. I've never even heard that phrase. Such a thing.
That would be extreme disinformation to the degree.
Well, so Heidi, talk about the Maggie. Now I've MAGA'd you. Now I've put MAGA in my head. Heidi, tell us how do you think about yourself politically? I mean, of course, we're having a little bit of fun with this, made up little title, but how do you describe yourself when you're thinking of describing your own political ways of the world?
The illusion of politics is just so, with the disinformation and how siloed we are right now, it's these labels are problematic. One of my favorite things, I ran for Congress last fall against a guy named Andy Ogles, who is kind of our Tennessee version of Santos. And we ran a great race. I'm really, really proud of it. The increase in my name ID has really enabled me to run a strong race for mayor where I'm leading right now. And for me, this mayoral race is kind of an extension of that. So to answer your question, I really liked it when I was running that race, when people would call me and ask me if I was a Democrat or a Republican. And the reason is because those labels have just become so divisive. And I really think people are tired of fighting. So, I mean, if you ask where I am politically, you'll find that I'm probably just about as progressive as it gets, with the exception that fiscal responsibility is paramount to me. It's what every single person, when you ask them what their political bent is, right? They say, I'm fiscally conservative, but socially liberal. So I believe in civility, hard work, fiscal responsibility, and stay the hell out of my bedroom.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. So, Heidi, you're running for mayor of Nashville. Nashville's one of those, great American cities that, so many people have visited, have, my sister-in-law lives there, it feels like everybody's got a connection to Nashville. Tell us about the city and what's going on, and what prompted you to want to lead the city of Nashville.
Yeah, I grew up in the city and it's changed a lot. I mean, it's been a very high growth city and intermittently over the past decade or so, the highest growth city in the country. And so, that has great benefits, but it also comes with great problems. And one of the biggest problems we're dealing with is not dissimilar from what all the other large cities are dealing with, which is affordability. And we have a lot of people who feel priced out of Nashville. And I used to be in the music business. I had a band, so cliche, right? I grew up in Nashville and had a band.
It's
And
not cliche. It's awesome. It's congratulations, and may you return to a stage someday.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so a lot of my buddies who are songwriters and musicians are getting priced out of
Mhm.
Nashville. And that my tagline for my campaign is, are we building a place to visit or a place to live?
Hmm.
And I think that really resonates with people. We have a lot of people in this race, 12 to be exact, 12
Yeah.
people running,
Yeah.
five really strong, viable candidates. And I think we'd all agree that that's the issue. The difference, why me, is, I'm a state senator, and the state is actually actively involved in trying to take over our city right now. I would call it
Yeah.
an attempted hostile takeover, and
Mhm.
we are the tip of the spear when it comes comes to the Council for National Policy's war on democracy in general. This is where it's happening. I am one of 6 Democratic senators in a body of 33.
Hmm.
And we saw with the Tennessee Three, for I'm sure most of your listeners probably caught some of that, with the legislators that we had expelled this past spring. We saw that, playing out in the
Mhm.
national
Mhm.
spotlight. But let me just tell you, that's been going on here for a long time. I mean, we're living in a totalitarian state. So why
Hmm.
me? Because I have really good relationships with my legislators across the aisle. And yes, I think they're really crazy on certain issues. But when it comes to the kitchen table issues, there are things we can get done. And I think we need somebody who can calm down that conversation.
Yeah.
Heidi, one of the things I know that you're aware of from all the work that you currently do in running for mayor is that there's limits to what a government can do to impact society and culture, and it's good to make hearty promises, but it's also good to be honest with people about what fits in what part of our society and has impact. Can we talk a little bit about this affordability, because it is a big deal? A lot of people think about it. What can a mayor or what can a state senator or a state governor do about that? Like, because normally it has to do with housing costs, right? I mean, affordability is usually how much housing is available and what the cost of it is, for the most part.
I, you
What
know,
what can be
it's
done?
Yeah, and it's such a great point to make that, campaign promises have very little to do with the actual job. And I agree with you completely on that. That having been said, it's a value system issue. We've had over the past 2 decades people who've been focused more on growth and less on the people who live here. And so, what can be done is, for one thing, our permitting process in our
Hmm.
city is just absolutely a wreck. It's onerous. People have to wait 2 years because we've got very specific bottlenecks, like, built not enough building inspectors, or things like that we have to work out. And because of that, people who want to build affordable housing are turned off. They're not interested in going through that. So that's one thing, streamlining our process. Another thing is, we have a lot of public land in this city that we could actually identify as for public private partnerships for affordable housing. I mean, a whole lot of public land. So one thing I want to do as soon as I take office is survey that land and look for opportunities to build public housing. It's gotten to a tipping point where it's not going to be good for anybody. And as soon as business starts having trouble with it, then we're going to see more motivation to do something about it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I mean, by that, I mean, like, I was talking to a hotel owner the other day who was saying, hey, man, business is great, but I can't afford to keep the rooms clean because we
Hmm.
can't
Hmm.
people can't live here who would clean them. So we're at that point where we either do something about it or it's going to start to impact our growth.
Yeah. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. Um, I Heidi, I'm interested. You currently serve as a state senator, which is a legislative position. Running for mayor, which is an executive position. There's some people that are, they're well fitted to be a part of a legislative team and to create laws and and then there's some people that are well suited to lead an organization like a city or a state or a country, and as Doug likes to say, be the executive of the executive branch. Completely different skill sets. um how are you thinking about navigating that, and maybe what have you learned from being a state senator that could help you in a in an executive position?
Well, before I was a state senator, I was a mayor, and I'm the only person in this
Oh,
race. I'm the only
Yeah.
person in this race who's been a
ah,
mayor.
Yeah.
And
Was it
so
Oak Park? Oak
Oak
Hill?
Hill, Oak Hill,
Oak Hill.
yeah.
oh, I
Yeah.
feel like we should have introduced you as the mayor as Mayor Heidi Campbell then, and soon to be the Nashville mayor. Pardon us for not knowing such things, for
No
bringing it up.
worries, no worries at all. So that I love the question because like I said, I'm the only one in the race who's actually been a mayor. I served on the Greater Nashville Regional Council's
Hmm.
Mayor Caucus, and that's a really important body regionally for us because we are really more of a regional city at this point, especially when you look at issues like transit and
Mm-hmm.
trash and things like
Yeah.
that. So my relationships, everything's about relationships, right?
Mm.
And my relationships on the regional mayor's caucus, I think, are very useful when it comes to dealing with the overreach of the state because most of those rural mayors are Republican and they don't give a crap about the
Yeah.
five
Mm-hmm.
issues we fight about in the legislature. They just want to solve problems because their constituents get mad if they don't. And so that's a great place to put leverage on legislators to do the right thing. And, it is a very different skill set. You're right. So I'm a Vanderbilt MBA and I'm a business owner, and I used to be in the music business. And so my skill set really is more attuned towards that kind of leadership than the long plodding drudge of, of being in your head into the wall.
Committee meetings.
Not that that's not important, it is, but,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it, and quite frankly, and this is part of my campaign pitch, I feel like Nashville needs a mom right now.
Mm.
Hmm.
Ooh,
We
say more about that.
well, we have a lot of men who are running to be the CEO of Nashville. I do not think that we need a CEO type who's interested in increasing shareholder value on the backs of Nashvillians. I think we need somebody who's focused on making the world a better place. And
Mm.
when my kids are sick, I will do anything I can to get them better. When my city is struggling, I will do anything I can to fix it. We need somebody who's passionate, who's got a heart, and who actually is absolutely adamant and determined to solve the problems that we have.
Yeah.
Hey Heidi, is that a line that you've curated up? You don't need somebody to be a CEO trying to increase share value for. That's a great line. I'm just saying. I
Yeah.
don't
Yes.
know if that's something
Yeah.
you're working already. Can you just talk about that phrase and what you're getting at? Some people don't really know what the pressures are on a CEO, and sometimes people think that the skill set, as Rob was saying, of a CEO is the right one to lead a city, but there's a lot of different kinds of executive leadership, and that critique that you're raising there, I think, is a really helpful one, just for
Yeah.
people to understand. Can you say more about that, or if you
Sure.
wanted to even repeat that phrase and tell us what you're getting at, and why you think that matters for the role that
Yeah.
you're talking
And
about serving?
it speaks to my philosophy, my general disposition towards the problems with our country right now overall, which is, we have been focused on greed motivated, share profit motivated values for a long time in this country. And we
Hmm.
see that in our corporatocracy. And Nashville has certainly been focused on tourism and growing, to the detriment of the people who live here, and everyone would agree with that. And so, when I say that, we don't need somebody who wants to create increased shareholder value on the backs of Nashvillians, what I mean is that, having, deals that are good for your career as a politician, should not be a motivation for making decisions. You and this is, may sound like a bunch of political BS, but it really is where I
Mhm.
come from. That you should be doing this because you really want to make the world a better place for the people you
Hmm.
serve. And so when I took office as mayor of Oak Hill, we had diminished our reserves by half, and I came in and eliminated my own salary and cut costs significantly so that we could actually add back our reserves and then some, at a time when our greatest source of revenue was being phased out. Those are the kinds of values we need right now, because we're in big trouble. We have 20,000 unhoused people in our city,
Hmm.
and we're a very red line city. Some areas are much better than others, and so until we triage the inequity in our city, we're all going to feel it. And so, I'm a very Maslowian kind of politician, I guess.
Uh, Thanks for that. Um, let's talk a little bit about the relationship of a city like Nashville to the state. You had already said that there's this move for the state legislature to want to come in and take over more control. There's also this battle that happens in cities like Nashville, and this is true in lots of states, where more money is being pushed out of the city to the state, and it becomes expensive for a city to have to live inside of a state when it has one of the major economic engines, and there becomes a push pull of that. You were a mayor of a city that sounds like it wasn't a prime economic driver, so it was, for the state. And the state wasn't
Right.
looking to, yeah, right. Where the state, looks to Nashville and Memphis and maybe Knoxville and some other places, but looks to those cities for its revenue, because states and cities, unlike the federal government, only can deal with the money that already exists. They don't get to make money like the federal government does, right? So
Yeah.
they're so can you
Right.
talk a bit about all that?
Yeah, so Nashville is the largest economic driver in the state of Tennessee. We bring in over half the state's revenue, and now and Tennessee is really arguably the most regressive state in the country.
Hmm.
And by that I mean that, our state government takes our tax dollars, our federal and our state tax dollars, and shoves it into mattresses. We have the highest bond rating and the highest fiscal stability of any state in the country. And I always say to my legislative colleagues, guys, let's not conflate fiscal stability with fiscal responsibility. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. They see that as, as fiscally responsible and very much in line with, making sure that our shareholders are, have reserves. And that's not what government's about. We have to really rethink. Obama had this great series on, it's called The G Word on Netflix, and he was just talking
Hmm.
about, hey, let's try and remember what our government is supposed to be about. And it's really good sometimes to just get back to the basics. We give our tax dollars to the government because we expect services to be provided for us. That's the bottom line. And so when our state takes those tax dollars and shoves it into, reserve funds, that means that we are not providing those services. And it's a great incentive to bring companies here where we don't have, we're right to work state. Labor is very cheap, but it's a horrible place for quality of life, and gets increasingly so when you actually fuel that dynamic. And that continued focus on growth and greed above quality of life for the people who live here is really the battle that we're dealing with. And the state is powerful. And we have found with the war between Nashville and the state over this past session that, theirs is bigger than ours.
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and so, we have to be able to work with them. And so one of my arguments for why me is, I think my relationship with my colleagues is important because
Yeah.
it comes down to whether or not you can talk to them.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was in Nashville a couple of years ago where I was speaking to somebody who lived there, and he was a conservative Christian person. And our work is often to help voters who want to detach their religious identity that became embroiled with a Republican identity, to help people separate those. And he
Yeah.
was someone who said to me, this was before the 2016 election, because he said, I have never met a Christian person who votes for Democrats. And he was as honest and serious
Hmm.
as he could be. And
Wow.
I said to him, like, for sure you have met. You may not have known it. You may not
Talking
have,
with one right now.
but of course you have, right? Um,
Yeah.
but that it was a real wake up call to me that in his mind, in his world, the world he paid attention to, there were just real clear lines of which side you were on, and those side. And Nashville and Tennessee as a whole feels like a place where those lines are pretty clear. And Nashville also seems to me to be a place where a lot of people want to sit out politics. They're never interested or become uninterested, and they're sitting it out. And those two features of just politics in America, people sitting it out and people being like, I have no idea who people on the other side of the political spectrum are from me, seem to really be at play there. Do you sense that? And how do you respond to those kinds of people when you meet them?
I don't just sense that. I mean, it's a fact because we went from 47th to 50th for voter turnout. So we were dead last for voter turnout. And
Wow.
we make it hard to vote, yes, but people are apathetic here. People are exhausted. People feel like, what's the point? Why bother? And that's why we're in a situation where we have legislative representation that does not in any way, shape, or form represent the views of our constituency. Because when we poll things, we know that people want common sense gun reform. We know they want cannabis legalization, all kinds of things that are not accurately represented in the votes that we see in the legislature. And I think that I was talking to this woman who's a parent of one of my kids' friends, and she was telling me, that she had, when she was a little girl, she grew up in Iran, and she had left Iran at the age of 8 with a teddy bear and her mom and nothing else. And
Mm.
because they had to leave because the religious right was taking over, and they knew
Mm.
that it was going to be unlivable for women. And she has grown up in the United States, and she said, I, for the life of me, will never understand why you
Mm.
people don't vote.
Mm.
And I think we have had such everybody can still go to Home Depot. Everybody
Yeah.
still feels like, nothing is crazy hard. I mean, yeah, we have traffic, we have, issues, but for the most part, people are, okay. And I think because of that, we've really reached a complacency. I think there's incredible distrust in government,
Hmm.
which is,
Hmm.
first of all, rightly placed, but then also fueled by a lot of disinformation as well. And I think all of these things have really gotten us to the point where our democracy is at
Yeah.
risk.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I I don't want to I don't want to make a transition from, but I'm about to. Our democracy is at risk to professional football, but we're gonna make
But
I'm gonna
more
make
people
that
do probably care
transition.
about the second than the first,
Oh yeah,
unfortunately. So
yeah.
that
I
could.
mean, if I I care most about democracy, and then football's pretty close.
The same.
I mean, Heidi, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. Huge Cleveland Browns fan. They're in the midst of talking about a new stadium in Cleveland. Our social media manager for Vote Common Good is a guy named Britton, who is a Titans season ticket holder. Absolutely loves the Titans. Um, what do you do about the stadium in Nashville for the Titans? And kind of, there's that specific issue, but we've talked about the relationship between the city government and state government. What's the relation? The stadium question becomes something that, gets you the opportunity to talk about the relationship between the city government and private business. Um, and so talk about kind of where you're at with the new stadium for the Titans.
So the stadium deal is more complicated. That's a central. You've identified a central point in this election, although I think it's phased out a little bit because it's been voted on in the council and it's happening. So I mean that's
Mm.
so the next mayor's job isn't to relitigate that, but to make sure that we're getting the best possible deal for Nashvillians going forward.
Yeah.
But that having been said, it's being characterized as, hey, all these people in Nashville are struggling right now, and you're kidding me. You're actually going to be putting money into a stadium. What about putting money into education and affordable housing and things that really matter to Nashvillians? Here's the deal. That's not what the option was. It wasn't as if the state, believe me, not as if the
Yeah.
state of Tennessee said, hey man, here's $500 million. You guys do whatever you want with it.
Right.
In
Right.
debt, by the way, in debt. That having been said, it is a bad look, obviously, when we have people being priced out to be focused on a stadium. And I think that it's very important that affordable housing, it's a whole East Bank project that's going to include multimodal connectivity, a light rail to the airport, and all kinds of things that could significantly improve the quality of life for people in Nashville. But we need to make sure that East Nashvillians, the people who live there, are benefiting from it and that it's a value add to their quality of life. And people need to understand that we had a really crappy initial stadium deal that it was really bad. That basically put us in a situation where our deal was we either had to cough up hundreds of millions for deferred maintenance on the current stadium, or here's this offer. And that hundreds of millions of deferred maintenance would have had to have come from either our budget or taxing Nashvillians. So it's a very complicated situation. That I don't like the look of the whole entire thing that we're focused on a stadium right now when Nashvillians are having a tough time. But that having been said, I also don't think that complaining about things is the way to go. I think we have to be positive and try and get the best possible deal we can for Nashvillians going forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well said. Well said. Heidi, folks from around Nashville is one of those national cities. It's, it's a city that people visit, they travel to. It's a city that has an impact on the whole country through the music industry. So like it's one of those cities that really matters. It's not like, say, Minneapolis or something like that.
Oh.
It actually is a city I'm just taking shots for no reason at all.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, you
it's
could
a
have
city
said
that
Fayetteville, but I think it was a good choice to pick Minneapolis.
I mean, yeah. Compared to Nashville, Fayetteville's a town. So I say that to say that no matter where folks live or who the mayor of Nashville is, I mean, matters. Like elections have consequences. Like it matters who the mayor of Nashville is. So I say all this to say, like, hopefully folks from around the country are like, oh, this actually, like, this could make a difference in people's lives. I'd like to help out. How can people follow along the race in Nashville? How can they donate and help you be successful in this race? A super crowded race. I'd love for you to talk a second about what it's like to run against 11 other people, because like that's a crowded race. But how can people connect with you? How can they donate? How can they be a part of the team?
Well, thank you for that question. VoteHeidiCampbell.com is my website. And I was the first candidate to a few weeks ago release a policy platform. I think if you're going to run for this seat, you need to take the time. I wrote it myself. I think you need to take the time to tell people what you plan to do. So that's on there as well. But we
Great.
could use all the help we could get. I'm winning in some polls. In some polls, we're neck and neck. Either way, it's a horse race for sure. There are probably about 5 candidates for whom it's really viable. But the 12 running against 12 has been interesting. I heard there was some town, I can't remember what it was, maybe it was Seattle. I can't remember, that there were 100 people running. So
Oh my goodness. Wow.
and a dog, apparently. A dog.
So how does it, is it 50+1, or is it whoever just gets the highest percentage? Will there be a runoff, or?
Yeah. And is this all happening in a primary? Tell us when the election is. And, someone's
Right,
asking,
sure,
a resident in Nashville is asking for a yard sign already.
Hey,
So people want to pop those up.
Sign up
give
for
us
a yard
those details.
sign. Sign up for a yard sign on my website. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also my cell phone number, I give it to everyone. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. It's 615-438-6338. And then the other thing I'll say is, it is. Oh, you just asked me what was your question?
When is the election? And when
August
do
4th.
people need? Okay.
The election's August 4th, and so you have to have over 50% to win. So I'm sure there'll be a runoff.
And then you move on to another election, to the official election. Is
the top two.
And that's just important for people to know. A lot of our core listeners kind of know this, but other people that might be tuning in, they don't actually know. This happens a lot on these August elections. People are like, why is there an election today? And what are we doing? And it tends to then only bring out people who are really deeply in the know, right? Because other people are just like, why is there a vote here sign outside the elementary school today? What possible thing is happening? So many people don't know. So if people can share the updates on this, that August 4th, there's a primary, and this is a nonpartisan position, right? The mayor. So that's also important. It's not like you're just going to get 2 people from 2 different parties and the parties will do the work. You as candidates really are forced to do this work, right? Okay. So August 4th.
And so early voting starts in 20 days. I think it's July. I can't remember, the 14th, I think. And then there'll be a runoff, I'm sure. And that's shortly thereafter, in September. So it's going to be a quick turnaround after the initial election.
Okay. So again, just so I have it right, for our work, August 4th, and then the top 2 people move on to an election in November, or are you saying the actual election will be in September? So all of these are special election. This is a special election situation.
That's right. Yep.
Is that what's happening? Is the current mayor leaving? Pardon me for not knowing this, but is the current mayor leaving and there needs to be a special election, or why is it?
It's not special election. It's just an election just for the council and the mayor. So it's just not it's not in tandem with federal or state elections. So we're also electing council members right now.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, look, if you have friends or family in Nashville, folks, let them know that this is just actually going on. I bet you'll be surprised that people will be like, oh yeah, I didn't know. I thought that was in November or something. We spend a lot of time talking to people about the first Tuesday in November, just as a culture. And then a bunch of elections happen at a whole variety of other times that really have great consequences. So Heidi, thank you for all of your service, for being a mayor, for being a state rep, for being a podcast guest, and for running for the mayor of Nashville.
Well, thank you guys. I love your show. It's so nice of you to have me on this morning, and hi to all your listeners. And I really appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Well, we're going to stay on and banter for a while and talk about the nonsense that is the current presidential political race. So you're welcome to hang around. But you should probably go do more important things and let us cover all this. Heidi, thank you so much.
Vote HeidiCampbell.com, folks. That's where you need to go.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Heidi. She's great. I'll tell you.
Doug,
we got breaking news. As you were kind of winding up saying goodbye to Heidi, I clicked on Fox News just to see what's going on. And we've got a Supreme Court ruling. This is a big one.
Oh boy.
Supreme Court ruled Tuesday that judges do have the power to override state legislators when it comes to how federal elections are carried out. This is fantastic news, folks.
There we go.
This is
So-
really, really good news.
So let's put together a deep dive on this for people. We'll put together a nerdy deep dive that we won't do today. But there was an argument made by the election denying forces in the Republican Party. I'll just shorten it to say by the Republican Party, that there's this thing about state legislatures based on the Constitution as being the final authority, not any other laws or rules. So at any point, their argument is if the state legislature just decides all those ballots, we're going to get rid of those and we're going to appoint someone, they have the power to do that. It's called the singular. There's a phrase they use for it.
Yes.
It's like the Anyway, the Supreme Court has blocked that apparently. So that is good news.
Yeah, this court has had some surprising decisions.
Okay, all right. Can I rant for a second?
The
Supreme Court decides what cases it's going to take up. The Supreme Court decides, hey, this is an issue that the appellate courts ruled on, that federal courts have ruled on, but we think it needs another look, right? That's how anything gets to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court picks and chooses which cases they think are viable to come before them. The fact that they allowed this to get to the Supreme Court, I think, is a real condemnation of the choice making of the Supreme Court. This never should have had a chance. This is such bonkery legal theory that, in my view, it's like that this has been decided. And the fact that they allowed it to get to this point and allowed all the pieces of all the apparatus of the Supreme Court to be in place. So yes, congratulations on them doing the right thing. But this wasn't a close call. And the Supreme Court is supposed to engage when it's a close constitutional call. And even if it turns out to be, 9-0, that still is something that they felt like needed to have an argument brought to the highest level. The fact that they granted this, I don't remember the term that they use for
independent state legislature theory.
Independent state legislature.
Thank you, Yabbits, coming through for us.
Once again, the viewers and listeners should be the hosts.
Yes.
The independent state legislature theory. It's been rejected by the very same Supreme Court that said we should get a look at this. Yeah. It's like when you're at the restaurant and you say, why don't you bring over the dessert menu? Yeah, you're setting up to order dessert. Like when they do that, why don't you bring those oral arguments before the Supreme Court? Good golly, these folks.
Well, maybe there's, so Alex is asking a question, meaning a state can't throw out elector votes if they don't like who won. Exactly. That is exactly what this is about. Not
quite so simple as they didn't like who won. But if they were to say...
But basically, it's
what they tried to do, what the Trump wanted them to do.
The argument of the independent state legislature theory is that state legislators are the ones who choose who the electors are. And the idea is they can act independently. They don't have to follow the vote of like the will of the people, as expressed through a vote, that they could act independently. Now, the Supreme Court taking this up, I'm so glad I'm glad they did. I hear what you're saying, but I'm glad they did. And I'm glad they made this ruling so we can put to bed the ridiculous argument in 2024 of, Arkansas is going to, the Michigan, state legislature, whoever, the Pennsylvania state legislature is going to, send it. I'm so glad this just takes those arguments off the vote. Table.
Did they say? Do you see it in the headline?
It looks like, based on the picture on the cover on the front page of HuffPo, it looks like it was 6-3. Robert Sotomayor Kagan. Oh my goodness, I just blanked on the new justice's name. And then Beer Guy and Handmaid's Tale lady.
Yeah. That's funny. You should give movies to each one of them, to each one of the Supreme Court
Yeah.
justices. Well,
Yeah.
look, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so true, but let's just be reminded the fact in this country, in the United States of America, God save the Queen, we
Man.
don't decide. Oh yeah, the Supreme Court said, therefore we've put it to bed. Oh no, the Supreme Court said doesn't put it to bed.
Yeah.
This is the whole point. So what's going to now happen is a whole group of lawyers and activists are going to rev up, and they're going to keep pounding at this door, like they did with Roe versus Wade, like they did with affirmative action. Like, you can say in this country, the Supreme Court has ruled on it, therefore it's settled. We don't seem to settle certain things in this country. There are root issues that we refuse to allow to be settled. And the can that has been opened on this one is a real one. So, okay, are we all done? Is the country going to be done with it? No, but are we done with it now? And are we probably done with it for the next decade? Yes. But if you don't, you may not know that people are going to keep talking about the independent legislative theory, but they will. Partly because this all roots back to the fake electors that Trump brought up. This is going to have something to do with the court case that's going to come against Trump for interfering in the election, the fake electors that were put forward, the alternative set of electors, because their argument all along was all we were doing was getting ready in case Congress didn't certify the electors that were put forward. We're now needing to have an alternative set of those because the state legislature has the power to pick any electors it wants to represent this state for its vote for president. Because, by the way, not to be a nerd, and I know nobody cares about this, but our electoral college system, individual voters don't actually vote for the president. You vote for your total votes determine a set of electors who then go and vote for the president. That's that thing that happens in December when the electors all get together. That was the thing Trump was trying to contest, that those electors were invalid. So their argument is, we were not trying to overrun the will of the people. We were trying to overrun the wrongly selected electors. So all of this stuff is rooted in that independent state legislature theory for why when you talk to your Republican supporting and MAGA supporting friends who say they didn't try to overturn an election, they tried to make sure there were the right electors that were there. And the rest of us are like, no, the electors need to represent the voters, not represent the legislature. And these folks are like, oh, no, don't you know? It's the Constitution says that the legislature is the one that appoints the electors based on whatever they want. If they want to base it on the votes, they base it on the votes. If they want to base it on the people with the largest cows, they base it on the people who own the largest cows, whatever they want. Their choice. And judges can't come in and tell legislatures what to do. It's a separation of powers issues and yada, yada, yada. So these are the arguments, because if we think that the people who are arguing for Trump's overthrowing an election thing are just basically saying, yeah, we think you should overthrow the will of the people, that's not the argument they're making. That's what they want to do, but the argument they're making is based on this other stuff, which is this cockamamie theory of independent state legislature theory, which is I was going to say yabbits, but it's not yabbits. Yabbits is honest about it being bunk. It's totally bunk.
Yeah.
So that's why when Rob says, wow, this really matters, because look, the Supreme Court rules on like 70 cases a year or something, isn't it? Some number like that, a whole bunch that people don't care about, right? But this week, this one was coming, affirmative action is coming, and another big one they think the Supreme Court is going to rule on, a big one.
Yeah, but
that's why this is a big deal in our current political situation.
Yes, and there's been a couple of rulings already with, the redistricting in Alabama, redistricting in Louisiana, that, forcing state legislators to go back to the drawing board, very literally, in drawing the congressional maps. I was a sky is falling kind of person when it came to the Supreme Court and what I expected their decisions to be. They have made a number of decisions this term that have surprised me. and
True that.
that frankly are good for democracy.
Yeah.
Like
True that.
and ways that in which we talk about, and Heidi mentioned in our conversation, where we're like, we've got this sense of like, democracy is in trouble. And
Mhm.
I my when my kids ask me, "Oh, Dad, what are you doing?" I always joke, I'm like, "Well, I'm just trying to save democracy, that's all." Like, there's like, that's that's
Like an old woodworker in your basement trying to save that old rocking
yeah,
chair from the
yeah,
1800s. You're just tooling
just trying to
away.
just trying to
Save something
save
valuable.
democracy. And
Well,
like
thank you
that.
for your work.
Oh, yeah. Thank
Uh,
you for your stuff.
you're welcome.
Um,
You're welcome.
there have been Supreme Court rulings this session that have absolutely
Yeah.
slowed the erosion of our democratic norms.
And
And
Kavanaugh has been a big part of a number of these, and it's a
mhm,
little surprising, frankly, not only based on his
yeah,
temperament that we saw in the nomination process, but on his record. So
yeah,
and I know the conservatives, the MAGA movement, are really upset with Kavanaugh and with Roberts on a bunch of things because they wanted
yeah,
them to be, Amy Coney Barrett kind of cats, and it turns out that they're not on all of these issues. On too many of them, I think they're on the wrong side and they're wrong about it. But other ones, it's a little surprising. And I'm sure there's going to be pundits right now, running out to news cameras and saying like, little surprised here. Kind of
yeah,
thought that because they took this up, that's why
yes.
people were concerned. They were like, oh, they're trying to really solve for it. But this is the kind of one that some of the nerds in us will want to read what
Yeah.
the actual arguments and statements were.
Doug, have you watched or have you listened to the Trump audio of him that CNN got?
Dude, did I listen? I've listened multiple times. I
Is it your
paused it.
ringtone now?
I paused it. If you haven't, folks, if you haven't heard, this is the recording that the Justice Department found or was given that is talked about in the indictment and quoted in parts in the indictment. And this recording was somehow got in the hands of CNN and has been released. And first of all, it's crystal clear, like recording wise, unlike other things that you've heard and where it's kind of muffling around and it's a little hard to tell what's going on. No, this is like a phone sitting in the middle of the table that they're all around and you can just hear every bit of it. And Trump just goes right in and just basically says, here's the document that shows that my case against Millie is right, and shows them something that he says are the battle plans for a military movement against Iran if they're needed. And the thing, Rob, that gets me about it is he's like, and I didn't come up with this. They came up with this.
Yeah, and
That's
the
what
thing
the Defense Department does, is comes up with the Defense Department has plans for attacking Canada. They really do. The Defense Department has a plan for military action against every country in the world. So for Trump to be like, well, I didn't come up with it. They came because you asked them for plans for what could you do against Iran. And they're like, well, this is what you would do because you're the executive of the executive branch that has power over the military. And then he's saying to them like, this really wins my case. So here's what I'm getting at. The guy is so petty that he's willing to share this level of secret documents with people who are writing a book to help his former chief of staff. And he's like, hey, can we get this to them so they can put this in the book so they can show that it was General Milley who came up with the plan to attack Iran and not me? Of course they do. Nobody thinks the president
yes. So a couple of things.
Yeah,
Donald,
please.
it's not a game of Risk. Like you're not like, it's not, your wizardry and
yeah, right.
Your strategery. Come on. The thing that amused me about the recording the most was how shocked Donald was when he found those particular documents in the pile of documents he had, because he
Okay,
says,
so
like,
recount for people what he says about how this comes out in the tape
yeah,
in
so
the tape
he
in the recording.
says, they're talking about this Millie situation where, he's trying to, to fight with General Milley because he only hires the best people.
Because, by the way, General Milley is on the record saying President Trump, when he was president, asked for plans to attack Iraq or Iran.
Yes. Yeah.
And that sort of looked really bad on Trump. And Trump is like, I didn't come up with a plan to attack Iran.
Yeah.
That's what this is about, is that he's some old grievance against his former, head of his, of the military.
Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, was he Secretary of Defense at the time? I think he was something else. But anyway, go on.
Anyways, so Donald says to these reporters that are there, or these authors that are there writing a book about Mark Meadows, he says to them, they're kind of discussing this, and you hear pages being flipped, and suddenly he finds the plans to invade Iran, and points out the fact that it's, General Milley who came up with them, again, because that's the job. And that's General Milley didn't say that you created plans, Donald. He said you asked for plans. Anyway. So anyways, but then the thing that Donald seems so amazed about is that in this stack of documents that he has, as he's, I don't know, walking around Bedminster Golf Club, there just so happens to be the very document that they're talking about.
Yeah.
And
he literally says, isn't it something just in with all my other papers? There was this too. And this thing was there. And the
so
whole deal for the argument against Trump
how cavalier and disrespectful he is,
and reckless,
with something like, I don't know, a military plan to invade one of the most dangerous countries on the planet.
Yes.
This is
and he's like, and I didn't, hey, this just happened to be in here. Look, it really proves my point.
Hey, listen, you might want to see this. I've got the military has a plan to invade Jamaica. I've got it. Let me show it to you. That would be no big deal, right? Like sure, it might be some kind of violation, but you laugh that off because it's Jamaica, right? Like there's no serious situation with Jamaica. We're talking about Iran. Come on, that we have been in conflict with for 60 years now.
Yep.
Like, come on. And he is completely cavalier that, along with, the receipt from, dinner and, Barron's report card and a pair of,
but I get your point.
and a pair of golf pants. Along with all of that is the plans to invade one of our biggest enemies on the planet.
That not only is it a country that we have serious tension with, and in our lifetimes have had military conflict with, it's a country that many Republicans have been saying we need to have military action against them. That Israel is asking on a regular basis for the United States to use military force against Iran. So you're right. It's a super big deal. And then the cavalier nature by which he's like, isn't it cool? Isn't this really cool? I mean, and then he even says in it, and this is why he's going to confess to these crimes, because he literally says, this is still classified, and then says to his aide, do you think we can do something about that? Clearly, I'm speculating this, meaning, can we declassify it some way so we can give this to the people writing this book so they can prove that I didn't come up with the plan to invade Iran? He's basically trying to figure out, how does he get it to them? And he says, well, I could have declassified it, but now I can't. Is there something we can do about this? All of this goes to the mindset. He knew it was classified, knows he can't just give it away, but then also doesn't care. Like and again, the thing that you want to say to yourself, to your loved ones, those who don't care, and your MAGA supporting friends. Even if it was declassified, even if Donald Trump had said, I'm going to do something reckless and foolish, and before I leave office at 11:58 on the 20th of January, I'm going to declassify this document. It's now declassified. An Iran battle plan. And then he chooses to show it to people. The problem isn't just that it's declassified or not. It's that this is not the kind of thing that anyone who takes the power of the presidency and the power of the military and the ridiculous level of death that we can bring, seriously, would be showing it to people just to win an argument that you're having with your former, military advisors. It's just so wacky. It is shocking. And you know this, the federal government has that document. And you know that the federal government has deposed all the people that were in that room. And they are going to testify. I looked at that document when Donald Trump showed it to me.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, when he has his lawyers say to him, there is no defense for this. We can't make an argument that a jury is going to win. This guy is going to Hunter Biden confess on this deal. He's going to strike a deal because, as you alluded to very prophetically last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, there might be another indictment coming in New Jersey, and it will be this one, showing secret military plans to people, not just having them, not just not giving them back, not just treating them like you put them in your bathroom, but literally showing them to people. So if there is a grand jury in the state of New Jersey where this crime was committed, he will likely be indicted yet again.
Yep.
It's just, it's simply stunning, Rob. It is something
really is.
else. And I know people think that he's Teflon Don and he's never going to collapse, but there are going to be enough people coming around that are going to say he better find a way to cover himself because, this notion that Donald Trump, if he's convicted of a crime, can still win the presidency, and that, no, the guy couldn't win the presidency when he was the president. He's not going to win the presidency when he's a felon. I mean, it's just.
Hey, I want to get on the record right now. I want to tell you who I think, and so put this down, mark this down. It is 10:01 Central Time, Tuesday, June 27th. Right now, I am naming who will be the Republican nominee for president in 2024. You ready?
Okay. Yeah. Who will be? Boy, I wish there was a drum roll or something. I have all these buttons I could push. Oh, hang on. Well, I won't do any of those. Okay. You go right ahead, Rob. There's your background. Who will be the Republican nominee in 2024?
Glenn Youngkin. I'm dead serious. I am dead serious. The governor of Virginia,
the guy
Glenn
who's not
Youngkin.
Running?
Yes.
The guy who said, I looked at it, I decided not to run. You think he's got a little side
I'm putting it down right now. Okay. I'm laying down the bold prediction right now at 10:01 a.m. Central on Tuesday, June 27th, that Glenn Youngkin will be the Republican nominee for president.
Well, look, okay. You could be right, but I just want you to know that Kimberly and Alex and Yabbits and Jim and Mike, they've all heard it, Rob. They're going to remember this day.
Yep.
All right. Do you think that the person he will be running against is Gavin Newsom? Is that also in the mix, or you think it's going to be Joseph R. Biden?
I think it might be Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, I thought you were thinking that. You're like, this is going to be a Youngkin Newsom race, and no one's going to be
the race that nobody thinks is coming. Doug, before we finish up,
you think both Trump and Biden by next July, a year from today, will have dropped out, and before it'll be a fast nomination process, and the nomination process will happen quickly in August, and we'll have an election that'll basically have a 6 or 8 month, run 6 months or less run window.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just before we finish up, because it feels like we're starting to wind down, I'd like to every once in a while, you gotta read Truth Social, right?
No.
Um, and
No.
sure you do.
Okay.
Would you like to hear
No.
what the what the former president posted on Truth Social?
Okay, Rob, I'm going to give you this
Um,
analogy. Yesterday, I went to my dermatologist because I have these little
yeah,
pre-cancer things on my face. I don't know if you can see them,
yeah,
but and they've been a bit of they've been showing up. And she pulled out this nitrogen little freezer thing with a
yeah.
little trigger on the end, and she starts these spots. Had she said to me, "Do you want me to spray your face with liquid nitrogen?" I
The
would have
answer's
said,
no, but it's gonna happen.
no.
Yeah.
But me saying to her, "But will you please?" uh, was also true. So no, I don't ever want to hear anything on Truth Social. But will you please tell us what
Yeah,
is on
so
Truth Social?
this is what the twice impeached. Oh, and we haven't even talked about Republicans expunging the impeachments. Um,
Oh my gosh,
oh my
good
God.
for them.
Anyways,
Spend your energy on that. But
yeah,
look, I know a
yeah,
lot of
that's how I
Democrats who
feel about
spend
it too.
time trying to do that about Clinton too. So that is sort of what you do.
Yeah. Here we go. In all caps. In all caps.
This is the only user on Truth Social. This is Donald J.
Yes.
Trump, the
Oh yeah.
indicted
Twice
defendant.
impeached, twice
37
indicted.
time indicted.
Yeah. Could somebody please explain to the deranged, Trump-hating Jack Smith, his family, and his friends that as President of the United States, I come under the Presidential Records Act, as affirmed by the Clinton Sox case,
Yeah.
not by this psycho's fantasy of the never used before Espionage Act of 1917. Now, Smith,
When did
in
he write that?
quotes,
When did he write
Smith, this morning, Smith, in quotes, Smith should be looking at crooked Joe Biden and all of the crimes that he has perpetrated on
spell
the
it wrong?
on the American public, including the millions and millions of dollars he extorted from foreign countries.
Wow.
Yeah. Crooked
mean,
Joe Biden.
This is the 37 time
Smith
indicted.
in quotes. Smith in quotes. Why is Smith in quotes?
Who is
It's running? The man's last name. Why is it in quotes?
I love your grammar. I love your grammar critique. That is not the proper use of a quote. Look at that semicolon. What you don't use a period and make a new sentence, man.
I understand spelling Biden wrong, throwing in an extra D. Really, but
no.
I don't. But why did he put Smith in quotes? It's the man's last name.
I guess everybody has the thing they're bothered by. It's like a grab bag of nonsense. And he just truly, these are the arguments that my friends that are hardcore Trumpers make all the time. The Sox case and Judge Jackson ruling on the Clinton Sox. This is all the talking points. So I know to a lot of us, all that stuff is nonsense. And like, it's like having, nitrogen shot at your face. You don't want to have to deal with it. But these are the arguments that the Trump people are making. So if you have Trump family members or people, this is what they're saying. Records Act, Sox case was already ruled on. And it's just, if this is truly Donald Trump's defense, and his defense is
trouble.
Oh, you know what? Maybe the special prosecutor and the current Justice Department didn't know that there was a case where a circuit court judge made a ruling about things that could be kept in a sock drawer by a president. That's why I could have if that's truly his argument, he may not plead guilty because he's such a fool. He truly might not know, Rob, that this is how bad this is. I go back and forth between, of course he knows, and this is all just political.
Yeah, it's a ruse.
Wrestling genre theater. But I don't know. He might move back and forth in his, sort of depressed, kind of grieving state of, with this hoarder condition of just really truly believing that because one lawyer told him one time that the Presidential Records Act means you get to keep, when the Presidential Records Act says just the opposite, that everything that a president creates is the property of the government and has to be returned. And a lawyer
such a
told
bizarre
him wrong,
thing because
or he heard wrong, and he's
it's
just latched onto it.
literally, it is literally the exact opposite of what
It's
he
Freaky
says.
Friday. Yeah, it's the opposite.
It's bizarre.
It's opposite
bizarre.
Friday day.
I mean, there's so many. I really loved our conversation with Heidi Campbell, but there are so many things to talk about, from like Vladimir Putin has lost control in Russia, like, and what was that all about?
What was that all about?
And sometimes we talked a bit about succession on this show, where you watch a television show and there's nobody to root for, right? Like you're watching the drama play out, but you're not really rooting for anybody, because as opposed to when you watch Ted Lasso and all you do is root for Ted Lasso. Like nobody's rooting. Nobody who's watching the show is rooting against Ted Lasso. You watch this play out in Russia, and it's just like,
the opposite.
What is happening here? And I'm pretty sure I don't want any of these people to win. Like, this is bad. I mean, so there's that to talk about. Doug, we had a new word added to our vocabulary this week.
We did?
Yes. Submersible. Submersibles. I mean, now I know that the word submersible was around before.
Been around? I was gonna say, I thought
I understand that
one, like tricycle.
Like talking about a word, like that talking about something being able to be submerged. You describe that as submersible. But as a noun, and I'm a guy who likes to change the
verbize
change the
things.
Adulting, efforting is my favorite, as Doug knows.
Yeah.
I sometimes will, projects that I'm working on, I'll text Doug and say, "Oh, I'm efforting that."
I'm efforting on that.
And it clearly annoys him, which makes me laugh too. Submersibles as a category of like, what is the difference between a submersible and a submarine?
Yeah,
because initially there was like, oh, this is a submarine, and then they figured out, oh, this is being controlled by a joystick for a video game. It doesn't have like, let's go down to the bottom of the ocean.
Some technical difference between a submarine
and a submersible
vehicle.
It's Doug, of all of this, I'm sorry, I know my silences don't make great radio, but
it's the let it breathe moment. It's the pregnant pause.
Doug, if someone said, "Hey, we're going to go down in a submersible craft to the Titanic wreckage," what would your immediate assumption be? This would be an opportunity for you to
say no.
No. Say you were going to go. What would it be? You're going to go down in a craft to the Titanic wreckage. What are you going to be able to do?
See the Titanic?
See it. See it.
Yeah.
The submersible had no windows.
Oh, it had a big front window. The whole front cone is a window.
I don't think so.
Yeah. There aren't side windows like in a submarine. This unique design had a big front cone.
Okay. Well, yeah. Then I'll think they're ridiculous.
As we all know, submersibles tend to do. Submersibles, have a front windshield as opposed to side windows, little bunks.
Okay.
Well, yeah, they didn't get to see it. And look, that thing you're referring to, was super tragic. And the other deal about all this was, remember when they were saying like they heard banging or they thought it was maybe pinging, and all of us were like, hey, these people are going to suffocate down there. Turns out that vehicle had a rapid, unexpected disassembly in a flash of a second, because it was a design flaw, and the Navy heard it and everything else. And it just a tragic story. And I know people are, griping like they
I'm
do
sorry.
about,
can we
billionaires.
just highlight for a second rapid unexpected disassembly?
Yeah. That's
I feel like I'm podcasting with Donald Rumsfeld right now.
That's how the Twitter bully Elon Musk described the blowing up of the SpaceX.
Yes.
They had a rapid unexpected disassembly. So this one did too. And I know people complain a lot about billionaires shouldn't be spending their money and on this kind of stuff. It's actually super important, and almost every adventuring technologies that we've created, ships and land walking and climbing, and has been done by super wealthy people for thousands of years. This is actually how it goes, and it's really quite a tragedy that the CEO of this company was arrogant as he was and allowed this to happen, and for this thing to blow up, or not blow up, but pressure explode and disassemble, and it killed all those people, and people wouldn't go down with him who knew it. They just said, like, this thing is not safe. Its design has small little micro cracks in it. It will not withstand that kind of pressure. And he's like, and they said federal regulations, it doesn't meet them. And he said, this doesn't have to meet federal regulations because it's a private craft and we're not selling it. They're like, that's not the point. The point is the regulations are right. And he was an anti-regulation guy, and he's like, I don't buy it. And so there's so much tragedy to all of this story. It's just really, I don't know. I think it's quite heartbreaking. But what is not heartbreaking is the fact that, okay, Alex, maybe she has the right word. Maybe it imploded as opposed to exploded. I don't know. It came apart. They say it
disassembled,
and it's super sad. And all of that, and all, as you say, all of this lays together in this same kind of window of time. And I've reflected on this a lot, that growing up in the late 60s, being born in 66, so my early childhood in the 60s, and then looking back on that from the 70s, it felt like that period of time when I was a child was full of political, social, cultural advancements in some technology. Like, there was people flew to the freaking moon and land. Like, there was stuff going on at that period of time. If you're not watching this live right now, I said people flew to the moon, and Rob just tilts his head a little bit to the side, like, well, yeah, they say people flew to the moon. All that stuff was going on. And I remember thinking in my teenage years, in the 80s and so on, like, wow, I wonder what it was like to live in a time with that kind of, well, here we go, friends, family, and lovers. We are in the middle of it right now, and it is it's wild. It is totally wild. The former president of the United States will be convicted of federal crimes.
Doug,
from before he was president, while he was president, and some for after he was president.
Oh, so great.
He is a literal outlaw.
He's an eternal criminal. The same yesterday, today, and forever. Doug, the Supreme Court ruled that students at the Ohio State University who also wrestled for their team, wrestled for their university, can move forward with suing the university over alleged assault and molestation by a doctor at the university that happened with full knowledge of the coaching staff of the university, which included at the time now Congressman Jim Jordan. Did you see this ruling
I didn't see
yesterday?
that. No, did
Yeah.
I? No. A
The
Supreme
case
Court
can
ruling?
go forward. Yeah. So what the Supreme Court ruled is that the case can go forward, which means Jim Jordan is in a lot of trouble. I mean, when you think about the Joe Paterno situation at Penn State, you think about Gregory Nassar, who was
So give people the background on this who don't know that Jim Jordan, before
so
he was
Jim
a
Jordan,
non-jacket wearing
the
insurrectionist supporting congressman from Ohio.
He was before he was a congressman, early in his career, he was an assistant wrestling coach at the Ohio State University. And while he was there, there were students who had been allegedly molested and assaulted by a team doctor. They apparently made reports about this and accusations, and there were cover-ups and ignoring, and everything that happened, with Jerry Sandusky, as Yabitz points out, at Penn State. And you remember Joe Paterno, knew about it. He had been told about it. And, they took his statue down, and one of the winningest coaches in college football history, was disgraced. Not because of what he did, but because of what he didn't do with knowledge of what was happening. Jim Jordan apparently had knowledge of what was happening.
Yeah,
and did nothing.
The claim. That's the claim of the people who were assaulted and victimized by this abuser, that they turned it over, including to Jim Jordan, and he didn't act on it. And now you're saying that case, that
Jim Jordan
can move forward. So Jim Jordan is going to be deposed.
Jim Jordan
about this.
he is named as a defendant in some of. So there's several kind of versions of the case. Several different wrestlers were allegedly abused, and they've brought different cases. There are some of those that that Jim Jordan is named as one of the defendants, along with the Ohio State University. So I mean, this is big news for one of the most influential people in Congress and one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters.
Yeah. And also a cultural reminder of how many of our institutions do not protect people from sexual predators.
Yes.
It is clear in churches, in schools, in sports teams, at the high level of elite level of attention, all the way down to, small places. It is a real problem. And as a society, we do not do the right things in responding to these circumstances. It is so often covered up or left alone, and it is a real problem. And to the people who were victimized in these ways, and truly, you just start to, when you put the whole gambit together, and you're like, it's just the sports circumstances that we know about. It's men, it's women, it's girls, it's young boys, it's college-aged men, college-age wrestlers at an elite school are being sexually molested.
Yeah.
Just stop there. That's happening. And that's happening places now. It is happening. It gets reported, it gets turned over, and people don't do anything about it. In fact, you turned us on to watching this show, Shiny Happy People, this documentary about this family in Northern Arkansas called The Duggars. And in that documentary, which is also about the fundamentalist movement of Gothard and so on, and turns out a bunch of people in my life that are part of Solomon's Porch world, the church that I pastored for 20 years, that were part of that thing, are all like, oh yeah, that's the world I grew up in. Like totally. I went to homeschool, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like I knew you.
Yeah.
It's around, and a bunch of these people are folks that I know. We should probably do a whole podcast series on that. Let's do that.
Yes.
But in that, they talk about how one of the boys was sexually abusing his sisters, and the parents chose to turn him over to a state trooper that the dad of the boy who was doing the molesting and the dad of the girls who were victims knew. So it brought him to that guy. That guy didn't do anything about it. And then a few years later, that very state trooper was arrested for child sexual molestation.
Yep.
So the whole of fundamentalist conservative Christians and people who are out claiming that they want to protect children from the pedophiles that are the Democratic Party. So this stuff just goes on all across the board. And if you hear people saying things like, why would they be bringing up pedophiles with the Democrats? It's because so many people have been sexually hurt and harmed. And they are all confused about where this stuff comes from. And it's so rampant in our society. And there's this blaming going on in all kinds of directions, and not enough organizations, institutions, individuals, and families looking at their own situation and dealing with it in appropriate ways. And we're not good at it. Literally from the Amish through the Catholics to the Baptists to the sports teams,
Yes,
to the Boy Scouts, just like where is it not happening? What sector of society? There are none. And when Jim Jordan then leaves that position of authority and now wants to sit in the United States Congress, and there were former Congress people who are in jail for sexual.
Denny Hassert,
the Speaker of the House.
From also, was he from Ohio or Indiana? I think he might have been from Ohio.
Texas. Okay, yeah, I don't know. Double down on Ohio, but if
only we had some way to know these things.
Where would you look up some old information like that? I don't know. Yeah, where would you look? Yeah, look, but this is so Jim Jordan needs to be clearly looked at, needs to be held accountable for what he did not do, and all that. And it needs to remind all the rest of us that there are vulnerable people, not just vulnerable kids, not just vulnerable girls. Vulnerable people that are being
big muscular guys
all over yes, that you would say something like, well, it's only because of physical strength and power, and no, it's a lot.
Yeah,
apparently Hassert is from Illinois. Thank you, Adam, for that. We appreciate
I was close with Indiana, right?
Yeah, well, if geography was the thing.
I mean, Indiana's closer to Illinois than Texas.
And it starts with an I. Yeah,
that's right.
That's right.
I mean, there's
saying, Indiana, Illinois. Yeah, I just got my two I states messed up on I-90 there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, there's always no end to what we could talk about. And
yes.
We've been going at it for an hour and 22 minutes today.
Yeah. Folks need to head over to
we have
Vote
at least
Heidi.
two special podcasts that we've set up. I can't remember the first one, but one of them is on. One of them is
Shiny
on
Happy People.
Yeah. One of them is in that fundamentalist movement, and the other one is on.
And for those yes, I would absolutely like to help make that happen. Folks need to head over to voteheidicampbell.com and get on board with her campaign.
Really do that. If you're watching, Vote Heidi, HEIDI, real fun spelling of a name. I've always thought the name Heidi was just a great name. H-E-I, like you say, how do you spell it? H-E-I-D-I. Vote Heidi Campbell, HeidiCampbell.com.
Yep.
And, let her know that you listen. Let her know that you care. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate that you care. And hey, tomorrow, Rob, we're going to air have an episode here. That's my conversation with the executive director of an organization called MoveOn.org.
Oh, fantastic.
Rana Epting will be the guest here, and Rana is fantastic. So if you're a fan of Move On, or have never heard of Move On, or if you don't care for Move On, any which way, you're going to love this podcast. So at 10 o'clock Central Time, 10 Central, we're going to put this out, partly because we need to get it out in an email so that people can see it. Anyway, a little bit later. So Kimberly, looking for you on that one. Kimberly, 10 a.m. Central Time. I know that's still bright and early for you, Jim, and the people on the West Coast, but with Executive Director, MoveOn.org. Okay, so now Alex is asking a question. See, Alex is figuring this out. Alex is saying, is it live or is it recorded? All right. Thanks, Alex, for busting us on this one. It's both. We're going to put it on live, and I'm going to monitor comments and pop up your comments on there like I'm doing now. Like putting Kimberly's up there, putting yours up there. But I did record the conversation a day ago because of some timing things. We needed to do it. So, yes, it's going to be a live stream. Yes, I am talking in live time with Rana. Yes, you will be commenting live, but it will have been recorded. And then I'll pop on at the end and say stuff at the end, and maybe we can chat about it.
Are you going to wear the same shirt? Are you going to wear the same shirt?
No,
So people,
I actually choose not to. I do tend to wear my shirts too many days in a row. So I may have worn this shirt. I can't remember. But I often be like, okay, look, here's what's going on. I try not to trick people into like, hey, this is, I sort of give a little explainer. So Alex, I hope that doesn't keep you away from live streaming and chatting. And I'll tell you why we do that, friends, if you want to know why. And it actually doesn't serve us well. On YouTube, it's better if we just post it as a video, truthfully. The way the categorizing on YouTube goes between the live tab and the videos tab, it would be better if we did it there. But you get a different algorithm and an announcement that pops up on all the other social streams, including YouTube. It says, Vote Common Good is now live. So when that happens, or we also do this in our partnership with the Christian Left. Christian Left is now live. And so that's partly why we do that. But sometimes we just are in a situation where we can't do the podcast in the live format, or we want to. So anyway, that's all that goes on. That's the deep backstories to all this. So anybody that's I'm thinking anybody that's an hour and 26 minutes into this, cares a little bit about the backstory. If you don't care about the backstory and you're still listening, and we appreciate that you are, well, wow. Sorry about that. I thought you'd care.
Yeah.
All right, are we good?
We're good.
Okay. All right. Thanks all. Thank you to Heidi Campbell, and we'll talk to you in sort of a variety of ways tomorrow.